Hi, everybody. This is Professor D, and I want to talk a little bit about discussion boards. And I know this sounds like a pretty dry topic, and it's discussion boards. Ugh. Well, here's the reality. If you're teaching online, discussion boards are one of your best tools. And what I would say, and I probably haven't emphasized this enough, but whether you're teaching online, remote, face-to-face, etc., use the LMS as the backbone to your course. Okay, so all the courses that I teach for the last 4 or 5 years, maybe longer, actually much longer now that I think about it, I've always used the LMS as my backbone. And part of that is because I just don't want to collect all this paper. And you have this great system that allows you to collect assignments and you can grade it right within the system. And then it gives you a grade. And then you don't have to do paper and pen to figure out student grades. What a great thing. So one of the areas that's great to use is discussion boards. Even if you're in a face-to-face course, you can say, okay, students, don't forget you have a discussion about this topic, and it's part of that flipping the classroom concept. Here's the content, here's the discussion board. Next class when we come together, we're going to talk about, what came out of that discussion, because you can let students whittle down into the depths of that conversation, and then they'll be ready when they come into the classroom because they've already had the discussion. Okay. One of the things that I love about the discussion board, and I one of my colleagues said this back to me, something that I told him earlier, is this idea that you can bend the LMS to your will. You can bend discussion boards to your will. A discussion board can be anything you want it to be. It can be a repository for information. For instance, for a culinary course I finished recently, I had every week, I had the students post links to videos of them doing certain dishes or knife skills or something along those lines. And so the discussion board, yes, in this particular instance, I wanted the other students to see the links so that they could check each other out in terms of what they were doing. But more importantly, it was just a nice little environment for them to provide links to the videos for me. Yes, I could have had them just submit it as an assignment, but I wanted that possibility that the other students were going to look at those videos. Okay, so that's one example. Another example is the idea of a journal, a personal journal. And I'll give you a very specific example with internships. Okay, so if you have students that are engaged in an internship or a capstone of some kind, what have you, you can create a journal environment so that basically you create a discussion board, a personal discussion board for every student in your class. And what you do is you create groups, teams, and you can do this in Blackboard, you can do this in Canvas, and you just make it a one-to-one. So there's one student per every discussion board. They all have the same prompt, but they can't see each other's conversations. And so basically it creates a journal atmosphere where you could say, okay, every week you're going to post, one thing, create a new thread about what's going on at your internship site. And then you can give them feedback or not. And maybe it's just their environment, but if you want to peek in, you can. And that's a little bit better from my perspective than them submitting a paper every week, because the paper is a little bit more rigid. It's not as organic in terms of that journal um, sense. You want the student to be able to say, "Oh, okay, I just had a really rough day at my internship. You know what? I'm gonna go write about it." They write it as a paper, they're thinking about formatting, they're thinking about paragraphs, they're thinking about all that. And granted, you may want that, but much easier for them to just go into that discussion board, their journal, and just start typing away. Oh, and then my supervisor said this, and then I spilled the coffee, and then I broke the copier, whatever it is. The idea is that it's something that you can use within that discussion board tool that most people don't realize. And I do want to emphasize a little bit more this idea that you can create discussion boards for smaller groups. If you have a very large class, the discussion boards allow you to make that class smaller in the sense that, say if you have 100 students, that's not manageable in the sense that, one person speaks, are the other 99 going to hear them? Probably not. But you could create cohorts within that class, and you could carry those cohorts all the way to the end of the course where it's just 20 students. And so when you have a discussion, you can have all of those discussions happening within 5 different cohorts. And from a management perspective, this also gives you an opportunity to not have to respond to 100 students. Instead, you might have those 5 cohorts have a leader of sorts who reflects the thoughts from that group into a smaller discussion. So maybe it's just 5 students that are saying, well, we came up with this and we came up with this and we thought about this and we identified this. And then you respond there. Because responding in a discussion board is one of our responsibilities if we're teaching online, remote, face to face. If we put out a discussion board, we're supposed to chime in. But if it's 100 students, that's just not manageable. So if you break it up into smaller groups, you can still play a part. You can still hear what they're saying without having the burden of having to respond to each and every one of those students. But still, I would also go back to a previous video, make sure that you are mentioning the name of every student that you have in your class at least once every couple of weeks. And again, the bigger the class, the harder that's going to be, but you just have to try. Okay, that's part of the engagement piece. So discussions are great. It's just about how you set them up. And again, from a management perspective, you want to do things so that you can get in there, you can be a voice, they can see you, hear you, read you. And if you have any neat things that you've done with your discussion boards, please let me know. If you have questions about how to do something with a discussion board, please email me. I hope this was helpful. All right, see you soon. Bye-bye.